Sir, this lounge is reserved for priority elite members. I'm going to have to ask you to move along. The words were sharp. Laced with the kind of forced politeness that carried no courtesy, Amanda Lewis, the Sky Premier Executive Lounge Manager, stood behind the sleek marble counter at Logan International Airport. Her eyes scanned Malcolm Reed from head to toe, a look of thinly veiled doubt clouding her otherwise professional expression. Malcolm paused. He was dressed in a charcoal gray suit that fit his 6-foot frame impeccably. His crisp white shirt was open at the collar. No tie. In his right hand, he held his Priority Elite membership card, the gold emblem reflecting the overhead lights of the terminal. "I am a Priority Elite member," he stated calmly. Extending the card, Amanda didn't move to take it. She crossed her arms instead, her posture stiffening as her lips pressed into a thin line. "We've had incidents of fake cards recently. I'll need to confirm your status before granting access." Malcolm raised an eyebrow but maintained his composure. "By all means, scan the card." Amanda glanced over her shoulder toward Jason, a young employee standing nervously behind the desk. "Jason, alert security. We may have a situation." Passengers nearby stirred at the mention of security. A few glanced up from their phones. An older man in a navy blazer frowned at Malcolm. A woman with a designer tote gave him a long, disapproving once-over. The mood shifted perceptibly. "This card has been accepted at Sky Premier lounges from Los Angeles to Miami," Malcolm said, his voice steady. "There's no reason for this hesitation." Amanda shook her head. "Maybe those locations have lower standards, but we enforce strict policies here. We can't allow anyone in without proper verification." The implication hung in the air. Malcolm felt it, as he had felt it too many times before. His calm demeanor, his tailored suit, and his impeccable credentials were not enough to overcome the assumptions being made about him. "I am asking you to scan the card. That is standard procedure," he repeated. Amanda's smile was cold. "And I am asking you to step aside before you cause a disturbance." The young employee, Jason, picked up the desk phone and spoke quickly into the receiver. Within moments, 2 uniformed security officers arrived. One, Officer Daniels, was tall and broad, wearing the indifferent expression of someone used to following orders. The other, Officer Rivera, younger and visibly uncomfortable, stayed a step behind. "Sir, we've been asked to escort you from the lounge area," Daniels announced. "On what grounds?" Malcolm asked, his tone still measured. "Failure to comply with staff instructions," Daniels replied flatly. Amanda leaned forward slightly. "People try to sneak in all the time. You're not the first." Her words were not loud, but they didn't need to be. Malcolm heard them clearly. So did those standing close enough to listen. He steadied his breath. "I presented a valid membership card and requested that it be scanned. That is the full extent of my actions." Amanda waved a dismissive hand. "If you refuse to leave voluntarily, we'll consider it trespassing." A man seated nearby with headphones around his neck lifted his phone and began recording. His smirk suggested he expected a scene. Malcolm nodded. "I will comply with the request to leave. But this incident will be reported," as Daniels gestured toward the exit. Malcolm gathered his briefcase and followed. He moved with deliberate calm, every step measured. Emily, a young staff member in her early 20s wearing a light blue blouse beneath her navy Sky Premier vest, watched from behind the desk. Her eyes were wide with uncertainty. She glanced toward Amanda, then back at Malcolm. He caught her gaze and saw it. Recognition. She had checked the member database. She knew the truth. But like many before her, fear kept her silent. The man with the phone continued recording as Malcolm walked toward the terminal. Passengers whispered behind him, their voices a blend of curiosity and quiet judgment. None spoke in his defense. Most watched silently, offering the same complicity he had encountered too many times before. Before reaching the terminal exit, Malcolm turned back briefly. Emily still stood behind the desk, her face pale. Their eyes met again. She gave a tiny nod, almost imperceptible, a silent promise that she would not forget what she had witnessed. The lounge doors slid closed behind him. Malcolm paused. Standing tall despite the sting of public humiliation, he held his priority elite card in one hand and drew his phone from his pocket with the other. No anger burned in his expression, only resolve. He tapped the contact labeled Corporate Executive Affairs and pressed call. It was time to take action. The call connected almost instantly. Corporate Affairs. "This is Angela. This is Malcolm Reed," he replied, his voice steady. "I have just been denied access to the Sky Premier Executive Lounge at Logan International, despite presenting my valid Priority Elite membership card. I need to report a discriminatory incident, and I request immediate escalation." Angela's tone shifted without hesitation. "Yes, sir. Please stay on the line. I will connect you to our legal department." As the line transferred, movement at the corner of his eye drew Malcolm's attention. Emily had emerged from the lounge, clutching her tablet tightly to her chest. Her navy vest looked too large for her frame. Or perhaps it was the burden of what she had just witnessed that made her seem smaller. "Mr. Reed," she said quietly, glancing over her shoulder before stepping closer. "I checked the system after you left. Your membership is active. Priority Elite. No restrictions. No flags." Malcolm nodded once. "Thank you for your honesty." Emily swallowed. "I should have said something sooner, but I was afraid. Ms. Lewis has done this before. She targets passengers who don't fit the profile she expects." Before Malcolm could reply, the young man who had filmed the confrontation approached, no longer smirking but visibly uneasy. I recorded the whole thing," he said, holding up his phone. "I thought it might be one of those viral clips, but after watching it again, I realized it was wrong. I want to give you the footage if it helps." Malcolm accepted his offer. "Please upload it to the secure link I will provide." He handed the young man a small corporate card, printed with an encrypted submission address. "Mr. Reed, this is Thomas Briggs from the legal department," a new voice said through the phone. "I understand there has been a serious issue at Logan. Please provide the details." Malcolm recounted the incident clearly and concisely. Thomas listened without interruption. "Do you have witnesses or supporting documentation?" "I have Emily, an employee who verified my membership status. I also have video footage from a passenger who recorded the entire exchange. Additionally, security cameras inside the lounge will confirm my version of events, as if summoned by the gravity of the moment." Officer Rivera approached cautiously. His earlier discomfort had transformed into quiet determination. "Mr. Reed," he began, lowering his voice, "I want to apologize. I followed orders because Ms. Lewis insisted you were attempting to access the lounge without proper credentials, but when she refused to even scan your card, I knew something was wrong. I would like to provide a formal statement." Malcolm regarded him carefully. "Your willingness to speak the truth matters. It will not go unnoticed." Rivera nodded, relief evident in his expression. "Thank you, sir." Thomas's voice returned on the line. "Mr. Reed, based on what I have heard, I am initiating a Level 1 inquiry. A senior corporate liaison is being dispatched to your location immediately. Please remain where you are." Malcolm ended the call and turned to Emily, the young man with the phone, and Officer Rivera. "I appreciate your courage. This isn't just about me. It's about ensuring this never happens to anyone else." Emily straightened her shoulders. "I'll provide whatever statement is needed. I stayed silent before. I won't make that mistake again." The young man nodded. "Me too," Rivera added. "Count on me." Passengers continued to move through the terminal, most unaware of the quiet storm brewing just beyond the lounge doors. But change had begun. The silence that Amanda Lewis had counted on to shield her actions was fracturing. Evidence had been gathered. Witnesses had come forward. The corporate machinery, often slow to respond, was now fully engaged. Malcolm glanced toward the lounge one last time. 12 minutes earlier, he had been escorted out under a cloud of silent judgment. Now, the narrative had shifted. He was no longer alone. The assumption that he could be dismissed and forgotten was unraveling rapidly. This was no longer just about lounge access. It was about accountability. The balance of power had begun to tip. As the minutes passed, Malcolm stood tall near the terminal seating area, flanked by Emily, the young man who had filmed the incident, and Officer Rivera. Around them, a subtle tension had settled. Travelers came and went, mostly oblivious to the quiet storm that was building. But those who had witnessed the earlier humiliation now watched the gathering with growing curiosity. The murmurs grew louder when Vanessa Cole arrived, dressed in a sharp navy pantsuit. Her ID badge identified her as Senior Corporate Liaison for Sky Premier Holdings. 2 colleagues followed close behind, one holding a tablet, the other carrying a leather folio. Mr. Reed. Vanessa greeted, extending her hand. "Thank you for your patience. I am here to conduct a preliminary review before our legal team arrives." Malcolm shook her hand firmly. "Thank you for your prompt response." Vanessa's gaze shifted to Emily, Rivera, and the young man. "You're the witnesses who've come forward." Emily nodded. "Yes, I verified Mr. Reed's membership. Priority elite. Fully active." Rivera spoke next. "I witnessed Ms. Lewis refusing to scan his card and instructing security to remove him without cause. I am willing to provide a formal statement." The young man lifted his phone. "I recorded the whole thing. I've already submitted the video to the legal department." Vanessa acknowledged each of them with a professional nod. "Your honesty is appreciated and will be protected." The lounge doors slid open, and Amanda Lewis emerged, her expression tight with frustration. Jason followed nervously, casting frequent glances at Malcolm and the growing crowd. Amanda's eyes landed on Vanessa. "Finally, someone who can clear this up. I've followed protocol, and this has gone on long enough." Vanessa kept her tone neutral. "Ms. Lewis, for now, I need you to remain silent. We are reviewing membership records and collecting witness statements." Amanda's face reddened. He presented a suspicious card. "I acted in the best interests of the lounge and its legitimate members." Vanessa turned slightly, her voice calm but firm. "The membership database confirms Mr. Reed's priority elite status. Your refusal to scan his card was a direct violation of protocol." A ripple moved through the onlookers. Passengers who had judged Malcolm earlier now looked uneasy. Amanda's confidence faltered, but she rallied. "If I had known he was important, I would have handled things differently." Malcolm's eyes narrowed. "That," he said quietly, "is exactly the problem." Vanessa's earpiece buzzed. She listened for a moment, then nodded. "Legal has reviewed the video footage. It confirms Mr. B. Reed complied fully with all requests. No signs of disruptive behavior. Additionally, the security cameras inside the lounge corroborate the witnesses' accounts." Amanda blanched. Jason looked down at his shoes. Vanessa turned back to Malcolm. "Mr. Reed, is there anything else we should know before we proceed?" Malcolm reached into his inside jacket pocket and retrieved a slim leather wallet. From it, he produced a card bearing the gold seal of the United States Chamber of Commerce Board of Governors. His name was engraved beneath the seal. "I am Malcolm Reed, Chief Executive Officer of Reed Global Logistics and a sitting member of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Board of Governors. I am also a founding sponsor of Sky Premier's diversity and corporate responsibility initiatives." The impact of his words was immediate. Even Amanda's defiance evaporated. Her face drained of color as if someone had flipped a switch. Jason's mouth fell open. Vanessa's professionalism held, but surprise flickered in her eyes. "Mr. Reed, I was unaware of your full credentials." "That is precisely the point," Malcolm replied. "My identity should not have mattered. Any member, regardless of title or appearance, deserves to be treated with fairness and respect." Passengers nearby shifted uncomfortably. Some lowered their phones. Others stared in quiet shame. The earlier amusement in the crowd had long since vanished. Amanda opened her mouth to protest, but Malcolm raised his hand, the same gesture he used to command silence in boardrooms. "No more explanations," he said. "This has moved beyond a simple misunderstanding." Vanessa nodded. "Mr. Reed, I agree. I have been authorized to escalate this directly to our executive leadership. Our CEO and the board of directors have been informed and request a formal meeting with you at your convenience. Not at my convenience. Malcolm corrected. Immediately. Today, Amanda's knees seemed to buckle slightly. Jason stepped away from her, distancing himself from the inevitable fallout. Officer Rivera spoke softly. "Sir, do you want us to detain her until the legal review is complete?" Vanessa answered before Malcolm could. "Ms. Lewis has been suspended pending investigation. She will be escorted from the premises." Amanda gasped. "Suspended. But I—" Vanessa gestured to Rivera and Daniels. The security officers moved forward. Rivera's gaze was steady, respectful. Daniels maintained his usual impassivity. Amanda's protests dissolved into the ambient noise of the terminal as she was led away. Vanessa turned back to Malcolm. "Conference room B, adjacent to gate 45, has been secured. Our legal team, compliance officers, and senior executives are waiting." Emily, the young man, and Rivera exchanged glances. Malcolm addressed them. "Your presence is requested. This is no longer about me alone. Your testimonies will help ensure systemic change." Emily nodded. "We'll be there." The young man's expression was determined. "Count me in." Rivera straightened. "I'll accompany you." As they moved through the terminal, passengers parted respectfully. The same crowd that had once watched Malcolm's public humiliation now bore silent witness to his return, not as a man seeking access, but as a leader demanding accountability. In the conference room, the mood was somber. Richard Evans, CEO of Sky Premier Holdings, stood at the head of the table, flanked by senior vice presidents, legal counsel, and the head of human resources, Mr. Reed. Evans began, his voice heavy with remorse. "On behalf of Sky Premier, I offer my sincerest apologies. What occurred today was unacceptable on every level." Malcolm remained standing. "Apologies are a start. Action is required." Evans nodded. "We are prepared to conduct a full review of this incident and examine broader patterns of discrimination or misconduct across all Sky Premier locations. Furthermore, we request your input on developing corrective policies." Malcolm's gaze swept the room. "Your willingness to act is noted, but I insist that the voices of those who witnessed and spoke out today be heard." Evans agreed. "Their statements will form the foundation of our investigation and the reforms to follow." The head of compliance spoke next. "We also intend to review training protocols and consider mandatory diversity and inclusion education for all staff, from executives to frontline employees." Malcolm listened carefully. "That is a beginning. But understand, I will not accept token gestures or temporary solutions. We will establish measurable outcomes and hold leadership accountable." As the discussion continued, Malcolm's phone vibrated. A message from his office appeared on the screen. "Media outlets are reporting the story. Public response is overwhelmingly supportive. Shall we prepare a formal statement?" Malcolm typed a simple response. "Yes," turning back to the room. He addressed Evans and the assembled executives. "This incident has exposed not only individual misconduct, but a culture that allowed bias to operate unchecked. If we are to prevent this from happening again, we must address both." Evans nodded solemnly. "Agreed." The compliance officer added, "We also request your participation in shaping our new customer service initiative, which we hope to unveil in partnership with the USHS Chamber of Commerce." Malcolm considered this. "I will participate, but only if the reforms are comprehensive and enforceable." As the meeting drew to a close, Emily, the young man, and Rivera were thanked personally by the executives. Evans assured them that their courage would be recognized and that no retaliation would be tolerated. Before leaving the room, Malcolm addressed the group one final time. This was never about seeking special treatment. It was about affirming that dignity and respect are not privileges reserved for the recognized or powerful. They are rights owed to every individual. The room fell silent, his words resonating deeply. Even those who had not spoken earlier now nodded in agreement. The first steps toward meaningful change had begun. and Malcolm Reed would see them through. As the conference room door closed behind them, the gravity of the moment settled over everyone present. The senior executives, compliance officers, and legal counsel remained standing until Malcolm Reed took his seat at the head of the table. Emily, Officer Rivera, and the young man who had filmed the incident sat to his left, while Richard Evans, CEO of Sky Premier Holdings, occupied the opposite side. Richard cleared his throat. Mr. Reed, before we proceed, I want to reaffirm that Sky Premier accepts full responsibility for the events that transpired. We are prepared to take immediate corrective action. Malcolm nodded slightly. Accountability begins with actions, not words. The head of legal, a composed woman named Karen Whitfield, opened a folder and distributed copies of preliminary findings. Our review confirms multiple policy violations committed by Ms. Amanda Lewis, including discrimination, abuse of authority, and failure to adhere to standard operating procedures. Additional concerns regarding her past conduct have also surfaced. Malcolm scanned the report without surprise. I assume you have prepared a formal recommendation. Karen responded without hesitation. Termination for cause, effective immediately. Richard leaned forward. Ms. Lewis will not be allowed to return to any Sky Premier property or represent the company in any capacity moving forward. We have already revoked her credentials. At a nod from Malcolm, Rivera stepped out of the room. Moments later, he returned with Amanda Lewis. Escorted by Daniels and 2 compliance officers, her earlier bravado had vanished. She looked visibly shaken, her eyes darting around the room. Miss Lewis, Richard began, his tone cool and authoritative. This proceeding is to inform you of your immediate termination from Sky Premier Holdings for cause, based on documented misconduct and verified witness statements. Amanda's voice quivered. I was following protocol. Karen interrupted firmly. You refused to scan a valid membership card, made discriminatory assumptions, and escalated a non-issue into a public incident. Furthermore, this is not the first complaint lodged against you. Though previous witnesses may have felt intimidated into silence, Amanda's eyes flicked to Emily, who held her ground. That's not true, Amanda whispered. But her protest lacked conviction. Malcolm spoke for the first time. When you dismissed me, you dismissed not only my membership but my dignity. You treated me as if my presence itself was a violation. Amanda opened her mouth to speak, but Malcolm raised his hand, silencing her. Your intent does not excuse your impact. The harm was real, not just to me, but to every employee, every customer who has suffered in silence. Richard signaled to the compliance officers. Ms. Lewis, please surrender your badge and any company property. Security will escort you from the premises. As Amanda removed her badge, her hands trembled. She looked around the room, seeking sympathy, but found none. This isn't fair, she muttered. If I had known who he was, Malcolm's voice was sharp. And that is exactly the lesson. Respect should not depend on recognition. Amanda's shoulders sagged. Rivera and Daniels escorted her out. The door closed behind them with a quiet finality. Richard exhaled slowly. Now that the immediate personnel matter has been addressed, we must confront the larger issue. This was not an isolated incident. It reflects a systemic failure. Malcolm folded his hands. Agreed. A failure of policy, of culture, and of accountability. Karen gestured to the next report. We have initiated a comprehensive review of all customer service and inclusion protocols across Sky Premier properties. However, we believe a broader initiative is required. Richard nodded. Mr. Reed, we would like to invite you to serve as a senior advisor in the development of a new corporate policy framework, one that ensures this does not happen again, not just at Logan, but across all locations. Malcolm considered the proposal carefully. I will accept, on 2 conditions. First, that the initiative includes input from staff at all levels, especially those who have previously felt silenced or marginalized. Second, that the results are transparent and subject to third-party oversight, Karen replied. Both conditions are reasonable and already under consideration. Emily spoke up, her voice steady. And what about employees who fear retaliation for speaking up? Richard responded immediately. A new whistleblower protection policy will be implemented, effective today. Malcolm turned to Emily. Rivera, and the young man, your courage changed the outcome today. You spoke when others stayed silent. That must be recognized. Karen opened another file. We recommend commendations for all 3 witnesses, with potential advancement opportunities for employees who demonstrated integrity. Richard added, Officer Rivera's cooperation has already been noted. Emily, your actions have positioned you for advancement should you wish to pursue a supervisory role. Emily's eyes widened. I would be honored. Rivera gave a humble nod. I was just doing what was right. The young man who had recorded the video shifted in his seat. I never thought standing up for someone would lead to all this. I'm just glad I could help. Malcolm smiled faintly. Change often starts with small acts of courage. The door opened again. A corporate communications officer entered, carrying a draft press release. Mr. Reed, executives. The media has already begun reporting the incident. We recommend a unified statement. Malcolm reviewed the draft quickly. It lacks substance. Revise it to emphasize that this is not about a single incident, but about institutional change. Acknowledge the witness's bravery and outline the forthcoming reforms. The communications officer nodded and departed. Richard leaned back, exhaustion visible on his face. Mr. Reed, today you held us accountable. You have my personal commitment that we will honor that accountability with lasting change. Malcolm's expression remained firm. Good, because apologies fade. Policies endure. Karen gathered the final documents. We will schedule follow-up meetings to track progress. Your continued oversight is both welcomed and necessary. Malcolm stood, signaling the meeting's conclusion. See that it happens. As the group dispersed, Emily approached him hesitantly. Thank you, Mr. Reed, for standing up, not just for yourself, but for all of us, Rivera added. You didn't have to involve us. You could have handled this quietly. Malcolm shook his head. Justice is never quiet. It is loud enough for the silent to hear and strong enough for the fearful to find courage. The young man smiled. I'll remember that. As Malcolm left the conference room, the terminal beyond looked different than it had hours ago. Not because the space had changed, but because the narrative had. The same passengers who once watched in silent judgment now looked on with a new understanding. What had begun as a moment of humiliation had become a catalyst for transformation. In the weeks following the conference room decision, Sky Premier Holdings moved swiftly to implement the reforms Malcolm Reed had demanded. Unlike the vague, performative changes corporations often announced during crises, these actions were concrete and public. The first step was the launch of the Respect Without Recognition initiative, a company-wide overhaul of policies designed to ensure that every customer received equal treatment regardless of perceived status. Malcolm worked closely with Karen Whitfield and Richard Evans, not only reviewing proposals but actively shaping them alongside employees from every level of the organization. A new mandatory training program was introduced, unlike the generic online modules employees had previously endured. This program was developed in partnership with civil rights organizations, customer advocacy groups, and behavioral psychologists. It included real-world scenarios, interactive workshops, and guest speakers who had experienced discrimination firsthand. The program also featured a unique component employee-led discussions, where frontline workers like Emily and Officer Rivera shared their experiences. Their voices became the heart of the reform, illustrating how individuals at every level could either reinforce bias or dismantle it. Within a month, every Sky Premier employee from the CEO to the newest customer service agents had either begun or completed the training. The company also revised its disciplinary procedures. Managers who violated policies of respect and inclusion would face swift and transparent consequences. Whistleblower protections were strengthened, ensuring employees who spoke out against wrongdoing would be safeguarded against retaliation. Malcolm insisted that progress be measured and reported quarterly. Independent auditors were brought in to review compliance and gather feedback from employees and customers alike. These reports were published publicly, holding the company accountable not only to its shareholders, but to the wider community. One of the most significant changes came in the form of a new Customer Bill of Rights. This document, prominently displayed in every Sky Premier lounge and service area, outlined the company's commitment to treating every customer with dignity. It provided clear steps for reporting discrimination or misconduct, with guarantees that such reports would be addressed promptly and seriously. Malcolm also worked with the company's marketing and public relations teams to shift Sky Premier's public messaging. Instead of focusing solely on luxury and exclusivity, the company now emphasized respect, inclusion, and customer care. The change resonated. Media outlets that had once reported the incident as another example of corporate failure now praised Sky Premier for taking genuine, meaningful action. Social media was filled with stories from passengers who noticed the improved service and employee engagement. Emily was promoted to assistant lounge manager. Her integrity and bravery had not only saved the day, but also paved the way for a new standard of leadership. Officer Rivera received commendations both from Sky Premier and from his own security agency, eventually earning a position overseeing staff training on bias recognition and de-escalation. The young man who had filmed the incident was offered a role in Sky Premier's social responsibility communications team, where he worked on campaigns encouraging passengers and employees alike to speak out against discrimination. At a press conference attended by media outlets nationwide, Malcolm stood alongside Richard Evans, Karen Whitfield, Emily, Rivera, and the young man behind them. A new sign read, "Every passenger deserves respect." Richard addressed the crowd first. Sky Premier made mistakes, but today, we are proud to say we have turned those mistakes into a model for accountability and change. Karen outlined the new policies and training programs. Finally, Malcolm stepped forward. The cameras flashed as he adjusted the microphone. This was never about my title or my influence. He began. It was about what happens when everyday assumptions are left unchecked, when dignity is treated as a privilege rather than a right. The true measure of a company or a society is not how it treats the powerful, but how it treats the unseen and the underestimated. He paused, letting the words settle. Today, Sky Premier has shown that change is possible when people choose to act with courage. I am proud of the employees who stood up, the passengers who spoke out, and the leaders who chose accountability over defensiveness. But let this also be a reminder. Change is not a destination. It is a continual journey. The audience applauded, not out of obligation, but from genuine respect. Even reporters who had arrived expecting a corporate cover-up acknowledged the sincerity of the reforms. For Malcolm, the most gratifying moment came afterward when passengers approached not to ask for autographs or photos, but to share their own experiences of being dismissed, overlooked, or mistreated. They spoke of how the changes at Sky Premier gave them hope that dignity and respect might finally become universal, not exceptional. And as Malcolm looked at Emily, Rivera, and the young man who had once been just a bystander, he knew the narrative had shifted not only within Sky Premier, but across the industry. 2 months later, Malcolm Reed returned to Logan International Airport. This time not for business, but to catch a flight for a long overdue vacation. The familiar hustle of the terminal buzzed around him, yet something felt distinctly different. He approached the Sky Premier Executive Lounge, the same entrance where everything had begun. The polished glass doors opened automatically. At the reception desk stood a new lounge manager, a poised woman named Carla, who smiled warmly. Behind her, Emily, now wearing a supervisor's badge, managed a team of staff who moved efficiently, assisting travelers with a level of attentiveness that had become the lounge's new standard. As Malcolm approached, Carla greeted him without hesitation. "Good afternoon, Mr. Reed. Welcome back. We are honored to have you." Her tone was respectful, but not because she recognized his influence or position. It was the standard greeting every Priority Elite member now received. Emily stepped forward, her eyes bright. Your usual seat is ready, sir, and if you need anything at all, just let us know." Malcolm smiled. "Thank you, Emily, not just for today, but for everything." She nodded. "It's not just me. Everyone here believes in what we built." As he walked through the lounge, Malcolm noticed small but significant changes. Near the entrance, a placard read, "Every passenger deserves respect. If you witness or experience any form of discrimination, please notify our staff immediately. We are committed to ensuring dignity for all." The message was clear. Respect was now a right, not a courtesy extended based on status or assumptions. Settling into his seat, Malcolm looked around. Staff treated each guest with equal care. Passengers who might once have judged him or others now engaged with a quiet sense of awareness. The culture had shifted, not because of one man's influence, but because enough people had chosen to speak out, to act, and to demand better. His phone buzzed. A message from Karen Whitfield popped up. "First quarterly report is in. Positive compliance across all lounges. Customer satisfaction up by 42%. Media response remains favorable." Malcolm typed back a simple response. "Good. Let's keep going." As he prepared to board his flight, a young couple passed by. The man paused, recognizing him. "Mr. Reed, just wanted to say thank you. What you did changed things. My wife and I travel frequently, and we've noticed the difference." Malcolm nodded. "Change is everyone's responsibility. I was just the first voice." He watched them walk away, reflecting on how far things had come since that humiliating day. Sometimes justice did not arrive in courtrooms or corporate board meetings. Sometimes it began with a single moment of quiet resolve, and sometimes that was enough to change an entire industry. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more powerful stories that shine a light on dignity, justice, and the courage to speak out. Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. Together, we can continue to stand against injustice and champion respect for all.